Please take your seats quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim and Chris. On today's Australian Open Round 1 catch-up, sponsored by DownloadTennis.com.
Novak Djokovic turns Melbourne into a frenzy.
Swiatek and Jabeur survive scares to progress.
And Andy Murray wins a 5-set classic against Matteo Berrettini.
Kim, Chris, today is the 17th of January and we are here to catch up on round 1 of the Australian Open at Tennis Weekly HQ. Well, I say round 1, it's more like 80% of round 1 because the weather did get in the way today. The weather in Melbourne was acting very, very strange. We had the heat rule come into effect. We also had rain, but I know Chris is ecstatic about this because it does mean that Sloane Stephens has made it to day 3 of the first Grand Slam of the season.
What a result. Sloane into day 3. She's still yet to lose a game or a set at this tournament.
Perfection, Chris.
Oh, I mean,
absolute perfection.
Even Nadal's lost a set so far.
I know. Well, thank heavens for the weather gods helping your girl Sloane out there. But I remember though, when I was at the AO, I had a similar thing, the intense heat and then the rain, and it's just, it stops play for various reasons, and it just means a very long day at the tennis and maybe a lot of action or not so much, and things moving indoors and whatnot.
It went very, very late on today. A little bit of controversy actually about the order of play. Kristen Flipkins was not particularly happy on social media. The schedule just did not come out, did it? At the end of the day, I can understand the organisers probably having to do a lot to cram in round 1 matches alongside round 2 matches. But yeah, it was a very, very long day today. Had some great matches. Match of the tournament so far, of course, Andy Murray versus Matteo Berrettini. We had Novak Djokovic as well, back at the Australian Open after all of the hoo-ha from last year, which we're going to cover. And we've, of course, got all the action from day 1. Raducanu, Coco Gauff also looking to headline day 3. And we're going to be revealing our collector set picks as well. So there's a lot to cram in this episode. But before we begin, we're going to be talking about Breakpoint. I feel like we're going to be talking about Breakpoint for forever, and this is probably the second time so far this season. Because Kim, you have already finished it. I haven't even started it. David Goffin doesn't even care about it, based on some of the quotes I've been reading. And Chris, I don't even know where you're at. Where are you at with it?
I think I've watched 4 episodes. Because we did get an excited WhatsApp from Kim saying there's more Rafa in episode 5, but I've not seen much Rafa yet.
Hang on, what has changed since we last spoke? Because I'm pretty confident on our first catch-up, you just said, I'm not interested and I'm not going to watch it because it's not aimed at someone like me. Yes.
Well, Bianca Andreescu tweeted that she quite liked it, and I thought if Bianca likes it, maybe I'll like it. I thought, if I'm going to be that person who is sort of saying things about something that they haven't seen yet, I may as well watch it and then double down on what I've said. So that's the approach I've taken.
I agree. And a lot of my friends were saying that the first episode was Kyrgios heavy. And I thought, do I really want to watch this now? But he does it's very much the first episode is on him, the maverick, they call it. And then they focus on, different individuals going forwards. Episode 5 is my favourite. It's Rafa at the French Open. But the emphasis is really on Casper Ruud and Felix in that episode. But I think, David Goffin doesn't like it. He said he's not really interested in seeing Kyrgios hanging out with his girlfriend. I think he's got a fair point. But he said it's not interesting for people who live on the tennis tour. But I mean, no offense, Goffin, it's not aimed at people who live on the tour. It's aimed at fans and new fans. So I think people at home will find it mostly quite interesting. I think there's a really good bit in there from Paula Badosa talking about her depression and her struggles with mental health, which I wasn't really that aware of. And so I think it does make me as a fan see some of the players in a new light, gives more context. So I've generally enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to the next 5 parts.
Well, that is good. I think I'm going to stick with it. I think I can understand Goffin's points. I think the first one was a bit, the Kyrgios redemption arc, and I think his girlfriend being it was quite interesting because they'd only been dating for 2 months at the time this was shot, and they're still together. So I mean, that does put a different lens on things in terms of her being there for his sort of doubles Grand Slam win. But overall, I think it's telling a story. It's showing you a different side of some of the players. And maybe my advice for David Goffin would be to watch the Drive to
Maybe
Survive
he should just
instead.
embrace
Maybe,
it.
yeah.
Maybe he should try before you. Don't knock it before you've tried it. Maybe he should think about that. But I mean,
Or maybe start episode 5.
Exactly. I mean, you spoke about Nick Kyrgios. Now, again, in our preview episode, we were talking about the practice match, the practice showdown, Nick Kyrgios versus Novak Djokovic. Now, Nick Kyrgios is out of the Australian Open. So, listeners, this is probably the most Nick Kyrgios we're going to be talking about over the next couple of weeks. I know some of you probably will rejoice at that fact, but we have developed a couple of theories, haven't we, at Tennis Weekly HQ with regards to that practice match and the fact that Kyrgios, withdrew due to, I think, a knee injury. Trying to put two and two together. I mean, I want to call you Sherlock Holmes, Chris, but what's your theory? What's your hypothesis?
I'm putting 2 and 2 together and getting 12. But hey, these are my theories. I think that potentially they knew that Kyrgios was not likely to play the tournament, and this was a chance for a headline match where there wouldn't be that pressure or the risk of him injuring himself further, because they did play short sets to 4 in that match. I also think that potentially, I just think that they knew what was going on, and that they knew that he wouldn't be playing in that one. And maybe my other theory is that it's connected with the Breakpoint launch, that in order to get some real hype around it, it was almost like the launch event for Breakpoint, that match. And with Kyrgios being the first episode everyone would be watching on that day pretty much, or the following day, it does feel like there were some contracts involved. There was the need to still kind of get Kyrgios on court because it didn't look like he was going to play round 1 at the time. So they're the theories.
Was it an assist on his knee?
Yes, the side of his knee, correct. Yeah. Not a big threatening injury, but he did bring his medical, his doctor out for the interview, which I haven't really seen done before. Normally you would just say what the injury is, but it all felt a bit
contrived.
A bit over formalized, because they said it wasn't necessarily something that would be a risk, but it wouldn't make sense for him to play it because he then might cause a little bit more problems. But it does seem like he will be out until Indian Wells.
Right. Okay. Well, so he won't be defending his doubles title with Thanasi Kokkinakis as a result. So that will be a shame for the local fans. I mean, we were going to start with Andy Murray, but just on the subject of that match on Friday and the players and injury, we had Novak Djokovic in action today trying to retake his title on his return to the AO. He only lost 7 games, was very comfortable against Roberto Carballes Baena. I don't think anyone thought they wouldn't be comfortable. But I think maybe the most interesting thing, or the question going into the match, was whether he would be okay, because there were rumours about a hamstring or left thigh issue. And, he came onto the court with some strapping on his leg, but generally seemed to move okay. Joel, did you have any concerns when you watched a bit of Djokovic today, or do you think that leg is nothing to worry about given the state of him today?
It doesn't look like anything to worry about, and I think the reception he got when he walked out on court, it's just amazing to think, the situation that he, was in last year, getting deported. I got the feeling that the fans and the residents of Melbourne, were active in wanting him to kind of be deported. So it was amazing to see, I think, him walking out onto the court and seeing all of the fans just, for me, just universally kind of appreciating him. There was no really kind of booing or jeering going on. It was all very kind of smiley, happy. Of course, we had all the Djokovic fanatics in there, and, watching that match, particularly that third set, they were served up with a real treat. I don't even think Carballes Baena played a bad match. It's just Novak Djokovic, particularly in that third set, just went up another level, which I don't think anyone really could have kind of stayed with him. I think he only dropped 4 points in that third set. So to me, watching it, it didn't really feel like the leg was an issue. Maybe it will come in later in the tournament, but certainly it was a nice, I think, warm up, and I think a moment just for him to kind of get back with the crowd and the fans, reconnect, and almost kind of be like, let's start afresh here. I'm a man on a mission, and this is one step on that journey.
Yeah, and from legs to hips, let's move on to talk about Andy Murray, because we were quite intrigued by this match when we saw it in the draw. Always going to be very tough for Berrettini, for Murray, well, and Berrettini quite evidently now. And well, we had quite a showdown, didn't we? Last set tiebreak, match point saved, Andy Murray winning, coming out on top, almost 5 hours of play. Joel, I've got to go back to you first, just because, you know, you are the diehard Murray fan. What were your main thoughts when you're watching this match?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, I like many fans, I got up in the morning. I was nervous. I was nervous to check the app. I'd actually gone to the completed kind of tab in my app just to check the score, and you know, to my surprise, it was still going. And, you know, I was a bit nervous, actually, given, you know, Murray went 2 sets up. He started really, really well. I mean, his returning was impeccable today. It needed to be against Berrettini, you know, with that big serve of his. And, you know, I was obviously getting a little bit nervous when Berrettini took the sets 3 and sets 4. But we all know Murray is such a fighter, regardless of the injuries he's been through. And the hard work we've seen him, I think, put in training, conditioning his body, I think, over the last few months, that kind of determination and that belief that he really wants to instill in him, you know, the fact that he needs to go and level up and realize that beyond, you know, just getting back onto the tour last season, it really all paid off, I think, in this match. And you could see that in the finish. You know, he was emotional at the net. It was a little bit unfortunate, I think, that it ended on a let cord.
That was awkward, wasn't it? It was a bit
awkward because he wanted to celebrate, but you can't celebrate on a let cord, can you?
No.
And what did you make of the Berrettini match point? That backhand, Chris. What were you thinking about that?
Wow, I mean, this is a recurring theme. We'll be talking about breakpoint again here, because
we're going to be talking about Berrettini's backhand, I swear, throughout the whole of his career, in terms of how it is hindering his potential.
I mean, his backhand is way, way weaker, but I think what this match showed to me more than anything is that the mental weakness of the next generation versus the Murrays, the Nadals, and the Djokovic's, because the tennis, there was not much to split them, obviously. It was a very close match. But it is those big points, who plays them best. And Murray should not have got out of that situation. But Berrettini just absolutely slammed that backhand halfway up the net. It was an absolute sitter. He could have done a lob. He picked the right way. And his brain ran away from him. And that's obviously a big theme of breakpoint, is that not being able to handle the pressure. And I think he'll be kicking himself. But I love seeing Murray win, because it is so tough watching him sometimes, because he is so hard on himself. So for me, the thing that I liked was that he said that he's really proud of how he fought through the match, and it could have got away from him, and he was impressed with himself, and he says he's hard on himself usually. So I just think, thank God for Murray fans. You stick around for these sorts of matches, and also thank God for Berrettini's sometimes lack of a backhand.
And we think he's going to be playing Thanasi Kokkinakis in the next round, which is, I think, frozen. Again, he's frozen in play against Fabio Fognini. Thoughts on that, Kokkinakis, you know, in good form at home? Do you think Murray is going to be absolutely shattered? I mean, he has got a metal hip after all. Joel, are you just going to sort of think that this first round win is a nice, you know, delightful moment, but how far could you see Andy realistically going now? Yeah,
I think it'll be tough, assuming Kokkinakis comes through Fognini. It's going to be 2 real crowd pleasers on the court. I think Andy Murray will, you know, he'll enjoy every moment he is out there. I think we'll know, from that first set in terms of how much his body has recovered. I'd like to think, given, you know, the conditioning and the strain he's put on it, over the off season. I'd like to think he's prepared and ready. But yeah, it's going to be tough. I think Kokkinakis has been playing well, at the start of the season, and with an Aussie crowd as well. I think, with Nick Kyrgios, who probably was going to be like their kind of the one expected to go furthest. Maybe one of them's going to have to step up, and maybe Kokkinakis will be looking at that as this is my moment, this is my opportunity to take that mantelpiece away from Nick Kyrgios being injured and withdrawn from the competition. So. Yeah, there's lots of factors at play, but yeah, hoping Andy can put a little bit of a run together now that he's got a really big win.
Don't say that, Joel. Don't jinx it.
Seed. Oh, I've jinxed it. Sorry.
Don't say putting a run together. That's just famous last words.
A good
isn't
showing
it?
against the Aussie with the crowd against him.
Go.
I think that will be.
There you go.
Bring one match at a time.
Players who went through sort of relatively comfortably, I suppose. I mean, Casper Ruud went through, did drop a set against Thomas Machak. He's got Jenson Brooksby next, so that'll be an interesting one. Holger Rune, straight sets for him. He may well capitalise on the fact that Kyrgios is not in the draw. Be interesting to see if he can do that. I think I had him going to the quarterfinals in my predictions.
You did, yes. You did not have Kyrgios, the only one of us.
Yeah. Oh, I just
well done,
knew.
Kim.
Psychic. But let's talk about Sasha Zverev briefly. He came through it in 5 sets against Varillas. He's obviously coming back after this long layoff with injury. He did have to fight back from 2 sets to 1 down. Chris, did you have any thoughts on what we saw from Zverev today? Is this very much, easing your way in, just not losing basically in these early stages for him at this point?
Yeah, I think we've seen, even when he has made it to I think his first quarterfinal when it was at Roland Garros, I think every single match he played was 5 sets, and he was actually seeded to make it through to the quarterfinal there a number of years ago. So a 5-setter for Sasha in an early round is not unusual by any means. And when you consider the context, this is his Grand Slam return, his first time at a Grand Slam since he had to retire in that semi-final, in that heartbreaking semi-final for him being wheeled off court. This has got to be particularly special for him. And the performance, it doesn't necessarily matter how clean it was or how impressive it was. It's about returning to the tour, starting to get those wins together and not putting too much pressure on yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, to be fair, that is very typically Sasha Zverev, isn't it? 5-set early
Loves
rounds.
Loves a 5-setter at a slam.
Yeah. Well, one match that we didn't quite get 5 sets, and I thought maybe, just maybe it could, was Team Rublev. I thought that was very disappointing. It was just straight sets. Joel,
I was a bit sad by it, yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of saying he could have more of a chance there, Dominic Thiem, but obviously not.
No, I think, I think he had abdominal injury during the match. I think he said afterwards it was just more precautionary rather than a kind of a major setback, but it sounded like that hampered him. And although we got a few flashes of brilliance, single-handed backhands, down the line with Rublev at the net, it was a little bit few and far between. And, I thought that was an opportunity. Rublev, I think he's been a little bit cold, I think, coming into the season. So, for him to get it done in straights, I was a little bit maybe surprised. And for Dominic Thiem, yes, back into the top 100, but again, it just shows, I think, that that journey up the ladder, it gets tougher. The tougher you get closer to the top, and when you're unseeded at Grand Slams, it leaves you vulnerable to whoever you could face. Andy Murray saw that with Matteo Berrettini. Dominic Thiem seeing that at the moment with getting players like Rublev, and it just shows how tough it can be. I think we shouldn't be sort of spellbounded by Andy Murray's, performance. It takes a lot of hard work, and it looks like for Dominic Thiem there's still a little bit of way to go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely taking a lot longer than we maybe envisaged, and maybe it will never happen. Who knows? Let's look at the ladies' events from today. We had a couple of nothing sort of, I would say, too surprising or anything today. Actually, a few, maybe some little scares. On Jabeur dropped a set, if you call that a scare. She was not at her best today by any means, but she got the job done over Tamara Zidanšek. Chris, we were chatting before the podcast. Zidanšek, formerly a Grand Slam semi-finalist, I think, which we all forgot until you mentioned it.
We're still debating. Is it her or Podoroska who's known as the worst ladies Grand Slam semi-finalists of all time? Ooh. Unfairly.
Yeah, I feel that's a bit harsh to say worst of all time, but they were in that very surprising...
Surprise, yes.
Yeah,
most surprising. That's a very good diplomatic way of putting it, that I should have put it to begin with.
Yeah, who's apologies. The most disappointing men's semi-finalist, Joel? It's got to be Sam Querrey, something like that, maybe. I don't know. Okay. We've gone tit for tat, yeah. Okay,
and we're going away from the AO now, so let's go back. None of us predicted, I think, Jabeur really to go super deep in this event. Chris, what do you think? She said she was quite frustrated today. Do you think she's just putting pressure on herself, being the second seed? Or is there something more worrying about her form at the start of this year?
I think with Jabeur, there's always a very high chance that it won't be, perfect tennis throughout. There will be moments where it is perfect. And that final set seems like she really upped her game and played like the number 2 in the world. But finding a way to win is just as important as playing kind of your best tennis. And that's something that I think is very useful at the start of a tournament, especially making sure that you're able to find a way, even if you're not playing your best tennis. But at the end of the day, she's not sending a message to the field with this sort of result. And the courts, as we said, don't necessarily suit her game that much. So I'd take it a match at a time with Jabeur.
I mean, in contrast, players who maybe are sending a bit of a message to the field. Belinda Bencic won very comfortably, dropping 3 games. Sabalenka through in straight sets. Caroline Garcia through, also dropping 3 games. Even, Karolina Pliskova also through very comfortably. No sort of shocks and upsets there, really. We did have a sort of... once upon a time, a player who was sending messages to the rest of the field, Garbiñe Muguruza, she went out, unfortunately, yet again early at a slam. 3 years ago, she was the finalist here, but here she is losing in the first round. Tough draw, Elise Mertens, not going to lie, tough draw. But what seems to be the issue with Muguruza? She keeps getting to third sets and just sort of...
She keeps winning the first set. And then we're losing in 3.
She served for this one. 2 of the 3 matches she's played this year, she served for and lost.
It feels to me like a real confidence
it's between the ears.
Issue of confidence. Yeah, I mean, I know that I think the calls for her to change up her coaching setup are only, I think, going to get louder. I think she's already admitted that she's going to have to drop down into kind of smaller tournaments, and sort of, I think, maybe kind of find herself again, find that time when she was really enjoying her tennis on the court, because I think looking at her and walking out onto the court, I just do wonder if she really enjoys it at the moment, because it's just been so tough for her. Her record over the last 12 months or so, last season was a bit of a write-off. It's continued again this season, and although she's getting herself into these promising situations, taking the first set, having the opportunities to serve out matches, it's just not happening, and it's a real shame to see.
Yeah, and in this one, she actually changed her shot selection quite significantly, so you can tell it is definitely a mental thing, where she hadn't hit a slice the entire match, and then when it came to serving for the match, she hit 2 slices in a row, and then she got broken. So something shifts in her head and her mindset, that she has this mental block there, and I'm not sure how you get around that without kind of maybe taking some time or refocusing where your attention is, because I don't think she needs more time on the practice court. I think she needs more time actually kind of working with a sports psychiatrist or something like that. Konta, she had great success from that, because she shows every match she's got the game. She just can't do it over 3 sets and close.
Do you think she should continue, what would you do going forward? Do you think she should just take a break, or do you think, she should just kind of continue going on? Or as I say, kind of drop down to a lower level, maybe skip the much bigger events? What would you say to Garbiñe Muguruza now that she's out in round one? I think she's out of the top 80 for the first time in a decade or so. What would you be telling her? I
think you've got to get to the root of what is the problem, and it is that in those moments where it's on her racket, and so you need to find out what that is. And again, I'll talk about breakpoint, but Paula Badosa said a similar thing of like the pressure that's on and caring what other people think in those moments and letting people down, or thinking in those moments that this is on your racket and it's yours to lose. Like, it's things like that you need to get to the heart of what it is. And I think to get the confidence up, you have got to drop down a bit. And I think otherwise you go to this pattern where the damage your confidence it will do playing in these bigger tournaments, playing against good players, you should win the match, you don't win the match, and then it only creates a further problem. But I would say she's also got to get off social media, because their social media pretends like everything is great. She is
opening herself up, isn't she? I feel
it's not going to help you. And so I think get back to why you like playing tennis, and it doesn't matter where you're playing. Drop down a level, get some results, get a bit less attention on yourself, and then spring some surprises at a Grand Slam, and hopefully we'll see her at the top again. She's doing her own Caroline Garcia, isn't she? That's what I'm telling myself anyway.
Yeah, Caroline Garcia should be her new role model, I think.
All of our role models.
Quite. On that note, let's take a quick break now, but do join us in the second half, where we'll be looking at all the action from day one of the Australian Open. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Australian Open Round 1 catch-up, sponsored by downloadtennis.com. And now we're going to move on to looking at the first day of play down under at Melbourne Park. We had quite a few Brits in action. In addition to, obviously, Andy Murray's excellent win on day 2, we had Cam Norrie and Emma Raducanu winning through in straight sets into the second round. So fantastic for both of them. Obviously, Cam Norrie had a comfortable encounter, was always expected to win that one. Raducanu, we weren't quite so sure about, given that ankle injury she picked up in Auckland, but she came through against Tamara Korpach 6-3, 6-2.
I woke up on Monday morning, and can I just tell you how nice it was to read that result? 6-3, 6-2. The most unproblematic Emma Raducanu match I feel like has existed in a long time. No worries about injuries. Played very, very solid tennis. No 3 sets, no drama. It was just like it was just like a sigh of relief, I think, in terms of an Emma Raducanu match at the moment. It's like the calm of it's the calm I feel before probably the storm, which is going to be this Coco Gauff encounter in round 2.
Yeah, I agree. It was very weirdly sort of surprising and nice and comfortable. But I mean, okay, Joel, Chris, just who's winning that match, Raducanu or Gauff? Just quickly in turn.
I think Raducanu, but we have a live poll on our Twitter right now if people would like to vote for that one. Currently, 52% of our listeners think that Emma Raducanu is going to get that win.
Oh wow!
Which I think
straight sets
will be
or 3
interesting.
sets?
I didn't ask that question on social media, but I think that Raducanu will get it done in 2. That's my prediction. Ooh. I'm with the listeners on this.
Because she's kind of going in not as the favourite, like she's, not as highly ranked. People will maybe thinking, we don't expect you to win against Coco Gauff. So maybe that will actually lighten her load somewhat.
Yeah, and the ankle injury, I think that takes the pressure off. She's not expecting herself to do too much here. And she probably was expecting quite a lot at the start of the season, having had like a really good off season, really improved her fitness, and then had this injury issue. So I'm hoping that she goes out there and she really takes it on. I don't want to see a defensive Raducanu. I don't think it's going to get it done because Gauff is such a good mover and she also can be really aggressive. So I want to see US Open Raducanu really going for it, taking that ball down the line and get that serve out wide working on the juice side. And I think she'll do it.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we also had another Brit who, young and up and coming Brit who didn't manage to get the win, and that was Jack Draper. I mean, it was a tough ask. He was playing Rafa, but he was doing mighty well. He lost in 4 sets, but that 4th set, Jack Draper very, struggling physically with a cramp. He said he he didn't want to retire because he was very determined not to do that and just to let the other player have the win. But overall, this is obviously a great opportunity for him, learning experience. I know you did a poll on our Twitter beforehand, didn't you, Chris? And I think the percentage odds for people thinking that Draper was going to win this prior was actually quite high, wasn't it?
It was quite high. What did you make? Quite surprising.
What did you make of this match? Yeah, what did you make of it?
I think it was great to see the sets that were competitive, and then obviously a big shame when it became clear that Jack wouldn't be able to, keep up the level. I was very pleased that Rafa did get the win. I think Jack will have some great results in his future, but I think Nadal really did need a win here, and I think given the fact that so many people thought he wouldn't get through this, I think they forget that he is, no matter where his tennis level is at, he is one of the fittest people in sports. He is quite an athlete because he is pushing 37, and he is making kind of a 20-year-old look like they really need to rethink and their ambitions over the next few years, because based on this, you'd say that the younger players won't necessarily be a threat unless you're Carlos Alcaraz over 5 sets consistently, because I was quite surprised that Draper was still kind of having these issues with his body. I don't know, what do you think, Joel?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make around, we're having younger guys come through on the tour, and that's all well and good, but once you get to Grand Slam and best of 5 set tennis, regardless of what you're doing on the tour, stepping up to that level is a challenge. And yeah, for Jack Draper, I think he's still obviously getting used to it. I think he's admitted himself he's a work in progress, and I still think back to I think his main tour debut in Miami when he had a wild card and again was cramping on the court. In really humid conditions. So I think it's a shame that he wasn't able to put out the best tennis consistently across the whole match. And I think he's obviously going to have to look at how he conditions himself in the future. But I certainly think it was a promising performance from him. I mean, I was interested from Kim's perspective about to retire or not to retire from a Rafa point of view, and obviously from a British point of view. Were you annoyed that he didn't retire, getting Rafa off court quicker, or are you kind of in that mindset of actually Draper's done a very noble gamesmanship-esque thing to do there by continuing on to the bitter end?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a 6-1 set anyway, so it's not like it was drastically extending the match in terms of time. So
I mean, Diana Yastremska would never, right?
Oh gosh, no.
Raducanu
She'd
would
retire
never.
2 points on the end. Yeah, I mean, it gave Rafa a bit more time to find his groove, I guess. But no, I don't. I think it was quite honourable of Draper to persevere and keep at it. So yeah, I mean, it's a shame that obviously he was struggling and we didn't get sort of the full match really that we were maybe hoping for, or but I'm as a Rafa fan, I'm just glad.
I think it will obviously though. I think it will keep him focused. It's like this is something I still need to work on, and I just think it shows that the tour is not just you rock up on the court and you're a talented tennis player and that's it. There's lots of different aspects to the game, and as much as working on the tennis court, I think he's gonna have to work off the tennis court in terms of to bring his body up to speed, because it's not quite there yet for the rigors of Grand Slam tennis. And regardless of his age, the talent he has shown, I have no doubt that he could reach maybe even a third or a fourth round at Grand Slam this year. But we don't want his body to hold him back.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at some other results from yesterday. We had Iga Swiatek, who, a bit like on Jabeur, not entirely convincing. Had a bit of a struggle in her opening match against Yul Niemeyer. She played Yul Niemeyer at the US Open last year, which was quite a tough encounter. That went to 3 sets, but she managed to avoid a third set this time around, 6-4, 7-5 for Swiatek. But it wasn't, she didn't have it all her own way, did she? Chris, what did you make of Iga's opener?
Well, I think I said on the last podcast that it's interesting to see how she'll fare if she loses a set early on, or especially if she loses the first set early on. And I think it was very close, that first set, and she was quite lucky to get that one. And then she was down 5-3.
At times was all over the shop.
It was all. I was seeing her hit shots where her weight was going backwards. It was only just clearing the net. It was definitely, as we talked about, a bit of a different Iga. She's not brimming with confidence, but as we've talked about, it's getting the win in the early rounds, because in the US Open, it was not flawless for that first week by any means, and then her level just went to kind of into overdrive in some of those later matches. So it's just about getting yourself into situations where you can get another slam, I think. And for her, it's getting yourself to that second week and giving yourself those opportunities, even if you don't have the confidence right now. I think she's going to get a stern test, though, against Bianca, because Bianca looked blooming good. Her numbers were really impressive from a winner's unforced errors perspective. So good for her to get the win, but there will be tougher tests as she goes through the draw, that's for sure.
Yeah, Andreescu did look very, very good in her opener, didn't she? So definitely looking forward to that match if it happens. We also had Felix Auger-Aliassime up against Vasek Pospisil. Now, I saw this at an early one-way set for Pospisil going onto the scoreboard. And I thought, oh gosh, what's going on with Felix? But he did manage to get through that in 4 sets eventually. Wasn't at his best, but he obviously knows Pospisil pretty well. Fellow Canadian player, and I mean Auger-Aliassime, one of the players featured in Breakpoint. So I think a lot of maybe new fans might be following him and some of the other players that if they've just binged that series over the weekend. But he's got Alex Molcan next, who beat Stan Wawrinka. It was perhaps a bit surprising that he got off to such a slow start. We saw him do a bit better in slams last year, Felix. So we'd hope that going through the rest of the tournament, he'll be a bit more on it from the word go, because you're not going to be able to afford to get off to a 6-1 loss in the first set against certain players, are you, Joel?
No, exactly. It was a bit surprising, given he ended up as one of the I think joint with Djokovic most titles on the tour last season. So it was a bit surprised that it was a little bit cold against Pospisil. I mean, Pospisil very, very experienced. You know what he's going to do. He's going to try and get to the net as quick as possible. And Auger-Aliassime didn't really have an answer to begin with, and I think he did very well to come through again in four sets against someone he's so well known with, given that they're compatriots. But having Alex Molcan next, I think that is going to be quite a tough test. I think he is a very, very, very handy player on his day. He came through against Wawrinka in 5. I feel like Wawrinka always puts on a good show at a Grand Slam in a round 1 and just ends up just not quite getting there, either losing in a very tight 4-setter match or in 5. But I think again that's going to be another stern test for Auger-Aliassime. You just can't afford, I think, to start in first gear and hope to kind of bring himself into it. I think he needs to be able to kind of come on the court ready to go, hit the ground running, much like he did towards the end of last season.
And another break pointer, Francis Tiafoe. He came through against Daniel Altmaier in 4 sets. Again, quite a stubborn match there, really, for Tiafoe. It was a couple of tie breaks in there, and I want to talk about his match, but I think above all, kind of want to talk about his outfit, because that was very. I don't quite know how to describe it. It's very visual. Joel and Chris, would you wear this on a tennis court?
It's giving me aerobics class in the 1980s vibes.
Ooh, that's a really good one. I was going to say sort of a Miami Beach roller disco meets your mum's curtains in the 70s.
Bit psychedelic, isn't it?
It is a bit.
Actually, it reminds me more of. Do you remember like Windows Media Player, like back in the day on the computer, and it had like that visual, that like colourful visualizer?
Yeah, we got
to
some
listen
tunes
to
on.
music to. Yeah, that it's giving me that vibe as well.
It's a lot, isn't it? I mean, we love a bold colour. Don't get us wrong.
Is it too much for Nike?
It is. You've got to play amazing tennis to do that. Even Rafa, I think, maybe, I'm not sure. You've got to certainly do better than Tiafoe did.
It does look like he should be at St Kilda Beach instead of playing professional tennis.
It's very volleyball, actually. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I see that now.
It did make us think of Grigor Dimitrov's tracksuit from 3 years ago,
yes.
Which I know was quite controversial. But I have to say, I think I actually prefer this to that.
Oh,
I don't know about you guys.
I agree with that. I think I wouldn't, if I was playing on a tennis court against this. It reminds me of what Leighton Hewitt said about Dominic Habati. His shirt had these cutouts for his shoulder, almost like his shoulder blades, and he said, I couldn't lose to a man wearing that shirt. And I think I'd feel the same, and maybe that's why Daniel sort of Altmüller kind of put together such a good performance, because he was like, I can't, this is too embarrassing,
this is too much,
That is hilarious what Leighton Hewitt said there. I wasn't aware of those comments, so that's quite entertaining. Right, before we have a look at what's happening tomorrow for day 3, let's talk about our collector set, because we revealed our picks for the tournament to the listeners in our last episode. We haven't revealed our own predictions, so that's where we come in now. Obviously, slight issue is that one of our picks, Kyrgios, is not in the tournament, withdrew beforehand, so we're going to have to just eliminate him from everyone's guesses, unfortunately.
But there has been some controversy, Kim. There has been some controversy.
Okay, tell me.
Well, one of our listeners actually predicted Kyrgios to go out, and I quote, round 1 or sooner.
Was she part of Team Kyrgios?
Yeah, well, I don't know. But
did she injure him, would be my question. Was she involved in the withdrawal?
Did they have insider knowledge? Maybe they did.
Well.
Well, we have to give a special mention. I think it's JB Juana Writer on Twitter with the Mystic Meg foresight, which no one else got. No one else actually had him going out in round 1. So just a special mention there. But yeah, we're taking Kyrgios out of the equation, so it's going to be out of 5 now for collector set going forward.
Yeah, I think you both had him in the quarterfinals, but I'd gone round 3 anyway. But that's null and void now. Let's go through each of the 5 players, and we'll just shout out what we've gone for then. So let's start with Rafa Nadal. Joel?
Quarterfinals.
Chris?
Quarterfinals.
Oh, I've gone round 4, but that's just me not wanting to tempt fate. Okay, Seb Korda is our next one. Joel?
Round 3. Chris?
Round 3.
Are you just copying each other?
I'm very worried by this, because Joel never wins this.
This is very true.
I've gone for semi-final.
Ooh.
Yeah. Iga Swiatek. Joel?
Quarterfinals.
Oh, Chris?
Round 3.
And
you are obsessed with Bianca Andreescu.
I was going to mention her again and be like, Bianca is looking good. Just saying. Someone
that would be the third round matchup. So, Jessie Pegula, Chris, let's start with you on this one.
I went for a final.
Oh, I've gone for victory. I think she's going to win the tournament, which is what I said, in our predictions. Joel,
yes,
what have you gone for?
I'm with you, and I'm quite confident as I can be after a love and 1 win in the opening round. Yeah, I've got a champion.
Yeah, sorry, we didn't mention her, did we? But yes, she has absolutely thrashed her opponent in the first round. So that's looking quite good so far. And Petra Martic, Joel, I think...
Yeah, I thought Golubic was going to win that. I'm not going to lie. So I put round 1, and I've already burnt one of my, one of mine. So I've already got 2 wrong with Kyrgios and Martic.
And Chris, what have you gone for that one?
I have gone for round 3, but Joel, you could collect a next gen set still. That's still possible for you. You could get 4 of the 6.
It's possible, but I feel unlikely.
Maybe we should change collector set so it's more next gen-y and have less
some fun new rules as well.
Yeah, some strange rules going on, that no one understands.
You've got to make them in 15 seconds. You've got to make your predictions.
Yeah, I went for round 2 for Martic, so we'll see what happens in the next round. So we'll probably publish those somewhere, potentially, I'm not sure. But we'll be giving an update on Collector Set sort of halfway through so everyone can see how they're faring against their opponents. Let's look ahead to tomorrow's schedule of play, which has been released, we're pleased to say, finally. We've got a number of matches. Chris, I assume Sloane Stephens is going to be top of your list. I think she's out in court 7 for her first round match.
Is that going to be televised?
Yes, I'll find it.
They televise
There'll be a
everything,
fan
right?
live streaming. Yes, exactly.
There'll be one man and his dog there. It's fine. And Joel, what's your eyes drawn to primarily tomorrow?
I mean, it's hard not to look at Emma Raducanu, Coco Gauff, but also maybe Karolina Muchova, Danielle Collins.
We love Muchova on here. We love Muchova.
Could be a good match, I think. And of course, you've got to love, Kim, I know you're a big fan, John Millman. John Millman on a wild card. I think he won in 5 sets in the first round. Has got Daniil Medvedev also in the night session on Margaret Court. Which
what about Mannarino, Joel?
Fun.
Fighting to reclaim the French number 1 spot.
Oh yes.
Is there an update on the French number 1, Chris?
There's always an update, Kim.
It's all go. Richard Gasquet is now the French number 1 at 41 in the live rankings.
Wow.
But Benjamin Bonzi is closing in. We also have a new contender who is up by 7 spots. Please say Constant. How do I say this? Anyone for the surname Lestien?
Yeah.
And that means that former French number 1, Mannarino, is down at 57. So it's all to play for in that John Isner match. So if I were you, I'd be out there watching that on court 3. That could be...
well, he's still playing. That's suspended in the second set, isn't it?
Still on court waiting for the resumption.
I will say, I mean, also, Elena Rybakina is also on a show court as well. Being actually treated.
Heavens above.
I know, being actually treated like the Grand Slam champion that she is. So hope she can make the most of that against
still court
against
3,
Kaya
basically, isn't it?
Juvan.
The third show court.
John Cain Arena.
Yeah, it's still a bit silly, and I do sort of side with her in terms of how she has been treated. And unfortunately, it's not just this tournament. We've seen it, a lot of tournaments after Wimbledon. Just I don't know what it was. Just did not feel like she was show court quality. But glad to see her getting on the spotlight. But Raducanu Gauff, I'm hoping. I've got big expectations for that. That could be the start of something beautiful in terms of a long rivalry. I think for maybe years to come, given it's their first meeting.
Yeah, and Rod Laver has Swiatek, Pegula and Rafa playing their second rounds. We've got Felix against Molcan out on Margaret Court, which they haven't renamed Margaret Court still. It's still got that name, unfortunately, but there we go. That's probably one for another day for discussion. Not that it hasn't been discussed at length already. We'll see how it all goes tomorrow, what we wake up to and what we have on and how late the play goes and what the weather's going to be like. So many variables. I think that brings us to a close, and we'll be back after the second round to chat through all the results.
And hopefully we'll have 100% of round 2 matches to talk about. But listeners, I hope you've enjoyed our latest episode of the Tennis Weekly podcast, our round 1 catch up of the Australian Open. Remember to subscribe to us to stay up to date on all the action to come in Melbourne. We are going to be going round by round for the full 2 weeks.
We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all major podcasting platforms out there. And if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
You can also follow us on social media or email the show. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Tennis Weekly Pod. You can email us at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com or check out our website, www.tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we will be back on Thursday evening at Tennis Weekly HQ for a catch-up on round 2 in Melbourne. So I hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.